Welcome back to the Beauty Inspires Beauty podcast. I am your host, Jessica Bergio, and I'm super excited to bring today's guest to you. Her name is Randy. She is a former salon owner, obviously hairdresser too, now turned coach. So my path of enlightenment is someone who's walking a few steps ahead of me. So I'm super excited to bring her to you today and to share all of the goodness. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff, so we're going to try to put it all in an hour. I already feel like there might have to be a part two.
I know.
So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here.
Thank you for your time, honestly.
Yes.
I know everyone's so busy right now. We're shooting, it is still 2020, and we're coming off of a roller coaster closure, COVID, all the things. So we're just going to dive right in. I'm going to talk to her about her story, so I'll have you guys listen in. But you might want to grab a pen because I feel like there's going to be some good notes today. So I want to hear about your story, obviously, of how you became a coach. And we can reverse engineer that back to the day one, or we can start from wherever feels like authentic to talk about.
Yeah.
How did you get into the industry?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I guess let's rewind back. So I've been an entrepreneur since probably the age of 6.
Wow.
I opened my first lemonade stand.
Yes.
And then I moved into the wrapping paper business. And so I was that little girl, like playing office with my girlfriend, where I was the boss and like handing them papers. And my dad is a motivational speaker and transformational life coach and was always doing talks and stuff. So I was always like, what can I do? Like, what can I sell? Like, how can I build something? And so
what an amazing childhood that must have been to have somebody speaking
was.
Powerful words around you all the time.
It was definitely a beautiful blessing.
Mm.
So I kind of started in that, and then after high school, I decided to go into hair school.
Okay.
I just felt really like called to be more of a creator in that way, and was a hairstylist for about 17 total years. Wow. So I was actually in Vegas.
Where you started? Is that where you started?
I started in Vegas.
Okay.
Yeah. So I moved around a lot when I was little. I actually went to 11 schools before high school. Wow. So I moved around a lot between my mom and my dad, and then my dad having different things going on in his career. And so I ended up in Vegas for high school. And then I went to hair school and basically had like a whole other lifetime there. I was married in my early 20s and built a really successful clientele.
Cool.
And then probably in about, I think it was like 2008, I moved to San Diego, which I had been here earlier.
Okay.
When
you were a
the age
kid?
of like 6 or 7.
Okay.
Yeah, I was here with my dad. And I just felt, I came here actually on a trip and met somebody, which like was like the catalyst, but I felt so inspired to come back here. I always loved it so much. And as soon as I was back, I was like, oh my gosh, like, yes, like this is where I'm supposed to be. So I actually commuted back and forth between here and Vegas for 8 years.
Oh my gosh.
To do my clients' hair.
So you were living in Vegas.
Well, technically, I guess I moved here.
Okay.
But then I like would go back. I would fly back once a week. I did that for a year. I had like a whole setup, like a car that I had, and like all these things. And then I started doing it like once a month. I did that for a lot of years.
Wow. Okay.
Simultaneously, I was building my clientele here, and then at some point, I felt really inspired to open my own space. So in 2012, that's when I started looking around. It's actually a funny story. I was looking around at spaces downtown because I've always been a downtown girl. I live in Little Italy now, but I've basically lived all over downtown.
I love it down here.
I've lived like in 2 different directions of where we are right now, like
which we're currently in downtown San Diego too.
Yeah, East Village.
Yeah.
So I started looking around, and I had always seen the space that I then took over, and it was always like intriguing to me. It was a salon that had actually closed down.
Okay.
But it always like was really intriguing to me, but it was really big. So I started looking around at smaller spaces. I ended up finding a smaller space over like kind of on the other side of like Bootlegger.
Okay.
And I started negotiating with these men. There was going to be like, I don't know, 4 stations. And at the time I was like, okay, I don't really know, but sure, like that'll work. It's like 600 square feet. Getting everything going, and I get a call one day. I was actually doing hair in Vegas, and they were like, hey, just so you know, we decided to go with a man.
That's what they said to you?
And I was like,
could they come up with a better line than that?
I'll never forget.
She
So
said
like,
they decided to go with a man. That's in case you missed that.
Yeah. And I remember being like,
What do you even say back to
breathe.
that?
I was like, breathe. And I was like, for like probably 30 seconds, I was pretty triggered. I was like pissed. You know,
Yeah.
like, are you kidding me?
Did you at that point think you had 99% had the place?
Yeah, we had already been like in the process of creating the contract and like everything.
Oh man.
So pretty quickly, energetically though, I had this feeling that like something might have been happening for me, that there was a reason why that didn't work out. And so what it did is it was like, you know, we have on our journeys, we have these little things that happen to us that help prepare us.
Yes.
Even though we think we want to be all the way at the end.
You mean even in the moment when you wanted to scream like the bad words?
I want to go to salon. I want to have 20 people. I want to be full the first day I get there. Well, the reality is.
And I want it to be easy.
Yeah. The reality is you might not be fully ready for that.
Yes.
So I think for what I was about to step into, I wouldn't have been fully ready. So what happens next is I end up going to the space. So I kept walking around downtown. I was called to this space. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to ask. I'm just going to call and ask. And a lot of people ask me now, like, how have you accomplished the things that you've accomplished? Well, there's a lot of reasons, and I'll share more of that. But one of them is just simply asking.
Yes.
Simply asking for what I want. I've never really been afraid to do that. And so I called and I said, hi, I see your space is here. It's 4,500 square feet. You know, I would just come from like a 600. And I was like, can you just give me like a little section up front? Like, you know, maybe 1,000 square feet up front. And they were like, sure, why don't you come in? We'll talk.
Wow.
So we started the negotiation and I'm like, okay. And of course, halfway through, they said, listen, like, it doesn't really make sense for us to just give you half up front. What are we going to do at the back? But what we can do is offer you this whole other side. It's 2,500 square feet. And I was like, okay. So kind of going to my point of like why the other one didn't work out. One of many reasons was like, even that was a little bit of like, I had been renting for so long. And then this was a space 600 square feet. And then now it's 2,500.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay. And it was one of those moments in life where like I didn't fully know exactly what I was doing, but I was a yes.
Yeah.
You feel like you're just like, your heart's like, yep. And people were like, are you sure? Are you crazy? And I'm like, listen, it's happening. So.
Oh, I remember the comments.
Board.
I remember.
Yeah. So get on board or don't. And so, but what ended up happening is, and I talk about this a lot in my work now because I believe in really living heart-centered. And when you follow your heart, things just show up. Yep. And so the graphic designer, whoever I needed, the website person, I remember my license, like my establishment license. So they wanted me to take over the space and they wanted me to open within a short period of time. Oh. But I didn't have an establishment license yet. And they were like, it's going to take 12 weeks. And I'm like, I have like 3 weeks. So I remember just sending it in and calling the lady and like, hi, it's me again, Like one day finally she's like, wait, what's your name? And I told her and she's like, I actually have your application on my desk. I'm going to go ahead and put it through. Like things like that were happening. It was just like, it was very divinely orchestrated. Is what I like to call it.
I love when shit like that happens. Yeah, so good.
It was so good. So I was like, okay. So I dove in. I'd say there were tears probably every day for the first 6 months. It was really challenging because I didn't really know how I was going to pay the bills. I didn't actually have a lot of money doing this. I took a leap and I was like, let's just do it because I was trusting myself and trusting the guidance I was getting. So there were definitely some challenging moments, but I always had what I needed. And I remember even thinking at the time, this was a bigger space, right? So there was like 13 chairs, which if you're thinking of opening a salon, just think about how many people you want to be in your space. It's a lot of people to have. And then, as you can scale it, you can have a lot more people if you want to. So, of course, at that time I was like, I want to feel it right away, right?
Of course.
But what I realized is as I hired like my first employee and then second and third and fourth, people were like needing things from me, wanting things from me, and they started complaining and they started all these things. And I remember being like, whoa, like this is very different. And that's when I again started to realize like, okay, like maybe there's a reason why this isn't filling up just like that. Because again, it was a process for me.
About having the right people in there?
Yes, the right people, but also for me to adjust to having employees, adjust for me to having renters, adjust for me to having people who needed things from me.
Yes.
It's like we have to trust that like there's a process to things for us to adjust to. So I ended up having the salon for 5.5 years. It was one of the most expansive experiences I've ever had in my life. I mean, talk about inner growth. If you want to grow, if you want to expand, if you really want to be able to step into your power as a woman or as a leader, whatever that is, like put yourself in that situation because it's uncomfortable situation after uncomfortable situation after uncomfortable conversation. Yeah. But every time I stepped in, I grew. Yes. I learned, and I remember the first time I fired somebody, I was shaking. My whole body was shaking, and she even said to me, like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Not really."
I don't want to have to do this.
But it got easier, even though that was never fun.
No, for
sure. That was never fun, and it never will be. But it got So,
and when you say you really learned what kind of energy and people you wanted in your space,
yes.
because it's like a relationship. I hear people talk about, you know, I wish I wouldn't have wasted so much time. And I say to people, you know, younger than me that say things like that, I say, you wouldn't now know what's important to you or what you value,
yes.
or any of that stuff, or who you are in a relationship or at a job or as a boss or as a leader, unless you go through that stuff.
Absolutely.
Because
I believe everything happens for a reason.
100%.
Always preparing us.
And we're in such a creative, eccentric type of industry where, you know, one day you could show up like this, one day you could show up like that, one day you could show up goth, one day you could show up with your head shaved, like fully tatted, like all of it would be acceptable, and you could totally be that person. So with that comes so many different personalities.
Absolutely, yes.
And my mom's been a business owner my entire childhood, so watching her and always asking questions, she was like, owning a business is like babysitting and putting out fires. And I was like, well, why would anybody ever want to own a business then? That sounds terrible. I hate babysitting. But when you look at it in a different way, you know, when I talk to her now, she still owns a very successful business. It's all about growing into leadership and being able to not babysit, but guide.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Right.
It's really about learning how to become an empowered leader. And when you are chasing people around, or you're micromanaging, or you're trying to control, people aren't feeling led. And that was one of my biggest lessons, is really learning how to step back, but also lead from my power versus from control or forcing and things like that. And obviously there was lessons, there were mistakes.
Sure.
But I wouldn't change any of it for the world. It was such a beautiful experience, and got to work with so many wonderful, talented, amazing souls that taught me so much about myself as well, and then the overall experience. And so at some point, I probably like my 4th year in, I started really getting curious with myself about, you know, what am I really the most passionate about? What really drives my soul? What really lights me up? And the more honest I got, the more I realized, like, I had done hair for so long, and then I owned the salon, and what I realized the common denominator was, I had been coaching people the entire time. Like, my clients was like, they would come to me and be like, okay, what, you know? And then of course I had like randomly created an entire coaching program for all my employees. But what I really was passionate about was like helping them step into their power, helping them remember who they were, how powerful they were, that they could have access to anything they wanted. That was always sort of intrinsically inside of me. And so I thought, this is interesting. Like, oftentimes I do feel like I'm kind of like chasing the employees around a little bit, like, hey, did you do your coaching work? Hey, did you do this? And sometimes they wanted to do it, sometimes they didn't want to do it. Same thing with clients. You know, sometimes they would take the advice, sometimes they wouldn't, based on where they're at. And I was like, this is interesting. I was like, what if I did this intentionally, and people actually hired me
just
and they
for this,
wanted me to help them. They actually wanted, and they were ready for the work. And I was like,
well, and you had 17 plus years of learning human behavior, which is what being behind the chair does for us.
Absolutely.
And I feel you, because I'm with you as far as like what I love the most about what we do is the connecting with people, and the fact that they do talk to us about all kinds of things. So much stuff. And we to them, which is wonderful. You learn how to hold space for people, and like, it's really quite incredible. So yes, continue.
Yeah, so that's when I started realizing, like, okay, maybe it's time to move on. Now it's funny, I was actually doing a talk like a couple weeks ago, and I was telling everyone in the audience about this, of like, I had something, I don't know if it was like an intuitive, or someone that said, you know, I think you're going to sell your salon.
Oh.
And I said, you're crazy. At the time, I was like, you're crazy.
It wasn't even on the radar.
You don't know me. You don't know. My salon's everything to me. Like, it was my identity. And that was a part of the lesson too, right? Is sometimes we get so wrapped up. We're not meant to be hooked into our businesses. They're not meant to be who we are. They're meant to be a part of us. But when we get hooked into anything, that's when it gets a little sticky. And so I learned a lot of lessons that way too. But I was like, that person's crazy. They don't know. But I think what it did is it planted a seed, and it started to open me up. So it took me probably about a year of kind of thinking about it to like, even, because I was very, very connected to my salon.
Did it make you think like, what if? Or did it start to let you open up and kind of give you permission?
Yeah, it started like thinking like, what if? But then, you know, of course, fear comes in. How can I do that? Like, this will be my 3rd career. I'm already at my mid-30s. Like, all the
You're almost dead in your mid-30s, I think, you know.
all the stories, which now,
Yes.
which I'll get into. But yeah, so I was like, oh, I don't know. And then I was like, what? This is like my like who I am. Like, how do I introduce myself to someone and not say I'm Brady, I'm a salon owner? And that's when I was like, ooh, maybe I should look at that even more then. And so I started doing more inner work on that, and through the process, it became really clear to me that it was going to be in my best interest to sell. And so that, what I didn't know at the time was that was going to embark me on probably one of the most wild, expansive, craziest years of my life. So what had happened was, this is, I believe, like mid 2017, I decided to sell. I got engaged. I sold the business, which I'll talk a little more about that in a second. I then got married, and then I got divorced within the
1 year.
1 year. So
We have a lot more in common than you think. Watch out, business women badasses. Jeez.
So yeah, but what happened was going back to, I guess it was, at some point mid 2017, I'm like, okay, it's time to sell.
Okay.
So I had a business coach at the time. I laugh only because I brought it to her, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna sell, and she's like, no, like, I really don't think that's gonna work. Like, salons don't make money. Like, you can't really sell a salon. They're not really worth a lot. Like, whatever. And market's not good. And I'm like, interesting. And then I went to a broker, and I'll never forget it. He was like, yeah, like, you could probably put it up for like a few thousand. I don't know. Like, it's not gonna make that much. And I was like,
for one,
yeah,
the stuff in it alone has value.
Yeah.
So, but that is business
so
advice.
It was really, really interesting advice. But it's interesting because a lot of people probably would have left and been like, okay, well, I guess I won't do it. But I thought, they don't know me. They don't know me. They don't know what I'm capable of. They don't know my space. They don't know what I've created.
Right.
I created a really beautiful brand and a community. They don't, like, the space is magical. I always felt it was magical. I always felt like it was more of like I was meant to be like a conduit for it. Like, it wasn't like my space. It was like something I was meant to give back for people with, because I just felt like the space was so special. So I said, okay. So what I did is I just got really clear on what I wanted. This was still part of my legacy. I wanted it to move on. I didn't want someone to come in that was going to like drive it into the ground. I wanted someone who understood it, who saw the value in it, who saw the brand, who wanted to take it to the next level. And so I just got really clear on that. And within 2 months, manifested, 2 amazing, young, talented girls. And I got very, very close to my asking price.
Wow.
Which was a huge success. And also just another amazing lesson, like, we get to believe in ourselves. Just because someone's telling you no doesn't mean that that's the final answer. And so again, it's like, how can we get more curious? What else is possible here? And again, it's funny because I teach that so much in my work now, but what I didn't fully realize at the time is that it had always been sort of being channeled through me throughout my whole life, even though I maybe wasn't like fully aware of that. So then I went on, sold the business, and I think the biggest fear that I had after selling was like, what if I regret it?
Mm-hmm.
What if I miss it? And this isn't anything against the amazing people that I worked with or the space, because it was so special to me and it always will be. But I still to this day have not missed it. It was just time.
Yeah.
I was complete.
Yes.
But what did happen that I didn't see coming was all of a sudden I didn't have a to-do list anymore. Because though I had taken on a few clients prior to that, I had a few clients, but like it was so much calmer. And I was also like trying to take some intentional time off. I think I might have been like 36 at the time.
Okay.
So I've been working since I was 14, but
Yeah.
really like since I was 7 trying to work, like I was wanted to work so bad. I was always just like, what can I do? What can I create? So it's been a long time. And
Like staying in that busyness.
yes. And so I was like, I'm just going to give myself a little bit of a break. Well, all of a sudden I'm like sitting there and I'm like,
I don't know what to do with myself.
So I'm like, okay.
By the way, I hope you got rid of that first business coach.
Oh, yeah, gotcha.
And that's a good lesson too for when you're hiring people. Like it's just like a relationship we talked about earlier. You don't know what you need until you put yourself in situations with people.
Yeah. I mean, afterwards, she definitely called and was like, good job.
Right.
I was like, thank you.
Yeah, she's human too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, what was I saying? Oh, so when that started coming up, I was like, okay, so what I found is I would like kind of write down my list, like Target, and then Target, and then clean out my closet, Target. And I was just like, like I just needed to be doing that. I was like at Target all of the time. I don't even know what I was buying, but I was just like buying things at Target because I was so anxious and so uncomfortable with just being still.
Yeah.
And this is where it really started to be have this opportunity to really see myself and where what I had potentially been running from. We see partly why we hustle and why we need to be doing so much of working these 15-hour days is because there's something inside of us that we're running from.
Yep.
And so I got to start facing that, and then of course went through right on the heels of that, went through getting married, and then 4 months later getting a divorce, which then really caused this massive like heart opening experience for me.
Wow.
Where I felt like, because I was actually, like I said, I was married in my 20s too. So before I got married this time, like I was like, we had been like 10 years. I'm like, I'm gonna wait. This is gonna be my soulmate. And at the time, I really didn't feel that way. So I was devastated. And kind of at like my lowest, I didn't have so-called like my business so much anymore. I was just starting a new business. The relationship had just ended, and I was just kind of like
rocked.
How did I get here?
Mm.
You know, I had understood personal development for so many years. I could have written a book about it. I understood it so well, but what I didn't realize is that I understood it from here up intellectually, and I hadn't integrated it down into my body. I had still been running from my fears and running from my feelings. And so though that was the most painful thing I've ever gone through, it also was one of the biggest blessings, one of the biggest opportunities for me to really, like I said, crack open my heart and to really be honest with myself about who I was and what was going on inside. And so I took the next year to really just go inward and heal, and even in my darkest moments, like heal myself up off the ground. And what I didn't also realize at the time was I started creating a process that was helping me actually show up for myself and actually process my emotions. When we get to that deeper emotion, that is actually when it can unlock and we can get back into our power, connect to our heart.
Okay.
And so what I've learned is when we're in our heart space, I mentioned this a couple of times, when we're in our heart space, that is truly when anything is possible. Anything you want. There is not one thing anybody could come to me and tell me they wanted that I would not say is possible when you are living a heart-centered life.
Got it.
And so, and we have to be willing to walk through the darkness. We have to be willing to walk into the uncomfortable. We have to be willing to be honest with ourselves about what we're afraid of and actually acknowledge our emotions. But the first piece is to let go of the stories that we've attached to the emotion. So we attach all of this meaning to the emotion. Well, I don't feel good enough. So the ego attaches, well, that means you aren't good enough. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. It's just a story.
Yep.
But the feeling of not good enough is within inside all of us.
All of us, yeah.
Anyone who says they don't feel that, they probably just need to have a deeper, real conversation with themselves. And here's the thing, you guys, is like your results never lie. So take a look around. What's going on in your outward world? Is it chaotic? Is it dramatic?
Are things
is it
happening to you?
Yeah. Are you a victim? If that's the case, are you feeling anxious a lot of the time? Are you hitting the same money walls? Are you dating the same men that aren't wanting to commit to you or aren't treating you well? That's your telltale sign that you're coming from your ego and you're running from your emotions. And so going back to what I was explaining about me and my ex-husband, like, yes, I could have blamed him for this or that, but I chose to take responsibility for me and my emotions, because wherever I was at is what manifested him in the first place, because he was reflecting back to me what I needed to see about me. What's going on inwardly is a reflection of what's going on outwardly. What's going on outwardly is a reflection of what's going on inwardly. So again, look at your results. Are you relaxed? Are you happy? Do you have all this abundance in your life? Are you attracting amazing high vibe men, or do you have a really deep connected partnership? Does money flow into your life? Not that it's about money all the time. It's not. But let's be honest. We need money to be able to experience specific things based off of our values and our desires. And so are you willing to receive it?
Yes.
Is there a flow there? And that's how you'll know where you're at with yourself. Are you very reactive when things happen? Or are you responsive? Right? It's not about getting to a point in life where there's no challenges when things don't break or we don't get a flat tire, or that we're never going to feel heartbreak again, or we're never going to feel an uncomfortable emotion. Nobody promised that.
Right.
And I think that's a big part of what we're learning through this year, is to really understand, like, this is not about pretending like everything's supposed to be good all the time.
Right.
It's about looking at the fact that there are challenges, and how are we going to navigate them? How are we going to respond to them? See, that's how I believe you live a life of ease, flow, and grace and happiness. True happiness really only comes in the present moment, but it also comes from being surrendered.
Yes.
Like, yeah, that happened. It wasn't ideal, but what's the solution? Let me respond to it. Right? I got a flat tire. Like, let's say I got a flat tire on the way here. I could be so pissed. Oh my God, can you believe this happened? I'm calling this person, I'm calling that person, I'm screaming on the side of the road. See, what you focus on expands. So me just getting into that mode is now manifesting more shit to come towards me, right? Or I'm like, dang it, not ideal. Let me call AAA. Now I've got 30 minutes. Let me do that meditation I missed out on this morning. Let me call my dad. Let me call my friend. Let me catch up on this or whatever. And like trusting that it's happening for a reason and it's happening for you versus to you. This is freedom.
Amen. I couldn't resonate with all of that more. I feel like that is something that is very hard to articulate to someone who's stuck in the shitstorm. Because what I've experienced too with my coaching clients is a lot of them would rather stay eating the same shit sandwich they've been eating because they know what it tastes like than try something different or new or show up differently. Yeah. It's like, this is kind of shitty, but it's not that bad. Could be worse. I've spent so much time in it here already. Like, I'm scared to do that. And the scaredness comes from ego, like you said earlier, but also, you know, the conditioned beliefs that you're not worthy of whatever it is you say that you want. And I think when we think of it from like the headspace of like, well, I want this, so how can I get it? Versus what would feed my soul, which could be an abundance, making money. And for me, financial freedom comes in the sense of like, I want to be at a place where if something happened to my dog, I wouldn't have to think twice. Can I afford it? That doesn't make me, you know, financially, you know, selfish or whatever, but it comes from a place of making better decisions and being able to have choices. That if your dog, well, you called me and you said, hey, guess what just happened? And I could say, here's a check. Will that make it better? And you say, yes.
Absolutely.
How wonderful would that be to be able to do that?
And the only reason why we have these negative beliefs about money is because of, again, the meanings we've given to them. Oh, if you're rich, that means you're snob. Oh, if you're this, that means you're that. Like, no, it doesn't mean anything. What if we were all, well, let me go back a second, because a part of where that's coming from is worthiness, like you touched on. So part of why we buy into these stories, like, I don't want a lot of money, or people who have a lot of money or this or that, is because we don't feel worthy of receiving it. But when you start to do that inner work and you realize, you remember, I'll say, you remember that you've been worthy the entire time. You remember how magnificent you are. You remember how powerful you are, how loved you are, all of those things. Then it's like, oh, well, what else is possible? I can have abundance and I can flow with it and I can receive it. So I get to have what I want. Now, I'm going to do things with the money to help or give back or whatever that is. But again, it's all the stories that we have around what it means to be a good person, what it means to be a not good person, what it means to be a snob, what it means to be this, or, you know, all of that. And again, when you can break that down, get to the story, stop buying into it. Because whenever you're buying into the story, you're just giving your power away.
Totally.
Take it back. Stop buying into the story and get to what's underneath. I just don't feel good enough. I just don't feel good enough. And that's a feeling. And so once you process through that, you get back in your power and you're like, oh, I can do anything I want. And then not only do you get to start living a life of abundance and magic and flow and freedom, but think about it this way. You also get to be an example for other people to do the same. And what would it be like if we lived in a world where more people just simply, took responsibility for their own shit?
Amen.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not about me pointing the finger at you. Hey, have you thought about doing this? No. How about I look at myself? If I'm triggered by you, I'm going to look at myself, right? Now, if you come to me for advice, that's a different thing. But, and, you know, really learn how to show up for ourselves and get into our hearts and choose love. What would that world look like? Versus everyone thinking they need to monitor and control and be the boss of everyone.
Or compare themselves to the person next to them. Yeah, I think one of the things that comes up too in coaching is, you know, I just want to make enough to get by. I just want to make enough to pay my bills. And that, I think that frustrates me so bad because it's like, I can't want that for you. I want you to want more for yourself. So how do you take somebody from being stuck up here and tap them into that feeling of worthiness and abundance? I'm sure it's quicker than a one sentence answer because that's what you do.
Yeah.
But explain that process of like, how does somebody go from those feelings of unworthiness, feeling stuck, getting mirrored back the same shit that they've been putting out, knowing that they're part of the problem, or at least not showing up as their higher version of themselves to attract the things that they say they want but feel that they don't deserve. How does somebody even start that conversation with you to be able to tap into that?
Yeah, that's a really powerful question. So first you gotta be ready. And like I think we were saying on the break, a lot of people, for some reason, it takes us a lot later in life to be ready. It takes us, 2 divorces and the loss of this or this heartbreak or this like failure or whatever we want to call it in order to be like, okay, I'm done doing this. My wish, my mission is to be able to help as many people realize that it doesn't have to be as hard as it was for me.
Same.
It can be easier. It's a choice. We are all at choice. But the first piece is readiness.
Yeah.
It's being ready and open. And then it really, all I do is help people remember what they already know inside of themselves.
Yes.
That's all I'm doing.
Like any good coach will, they will remind you of what you already know.
We all have access to this. And when I talked about earlier, when I was talking about my heart being cracked open, again, to clarify, I know I look, happy and radiant and all these things now because I am, and that's how I feel. At the time, I was crushed. It was very hard. And I still have moments sometimes where a layer of that will come up and I just have to show up for myself. But even though I was feeling that, what was happening is that because I was going into it versus running away from it, right? And also in the past, I would just go into another relationship. That was my pattern too. So this time I was like, nope, not doing that. So what was happening though is I was actually going in, my heart was starting to crack open. So the more my heart cracked open, what happened was, it's like, imagine divine truth coming down, like a direct source to truth. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, you guys, like this whole time I've been amazing. This whole time I've been enough. This whole time I've been powerful and I've been safe and everything's been happening for me. And you're like, what?
Why didn't anybody tell me?
Oh my gosh. Well, guess what? They were, but I wasn't ready to listen.
Yeah, funny how that works. Yeah.
So, and that's the thing. It's like, I could tell you all day how magnificent you are, but when you start to see, when you look in the mirror, you're like,
yep.
It's like, watch out.
Game over.
Watch out.
Yeah.
And so that's what I do. Is so I help people to remember. And the way I do that is by simply breaking down, we have to start catching the ego thoughts. Because when the ego is in charge, it's in charge. And the reality is, we are creating in every single moment. We're very, very, very powerful, whether you realize it or not.
Right.
We're very powerful, and you are creating in every single moment. Most of us don't realize that. I'm talking 24/7. So, and the reality is, we're either creating from our head, our ego, or we're creating from our heart and our intuitive truth. And ego-based creation is going to equal ego-based results, and heart-based creation is going to equal heart-based results. So first, you have to be at a point where you're ready for a change. You don't want the ego-based results anymore. You're tired of it. Now, some people will come and they'll say, this is the problem. And I'll say, I'll give a solution. I can tell really quickly. They're like, yeah, but. If that's where you're at, then it's just not time. Because what that typically means is there's a part of us that are still like addicted to the chaos.
Yes.
And really want to stay in the victim mentality. And that's fine. It's just, you then go ahead and take responsibility for your results. Don't come to me and tell me you're upset about your results, but you're unwilling to stop doing the thing.
Yes, or apply the work that I've...
Right,
yes.
That doesn't work for me. So it's really learning how to catch that story. And this is a process. This takes time. This takes discipline. Like everything that I teach, I do every single day and throughout my day. That's the only way I've been able to come as far as I have and heal from such a massive heartbreak as fast as I did. Like create the business that I've created in the last year where it has like catapulted forward. And so it's catching that first, getting honest about your emotions, learning how to show up for yourself, learning how to coach yourself, and getting back into your heart. And that's where you'll start to remember. So what I've done is I've created very specific tools and practices that you can do in the morning. So I have a very powerful morning ritual that I teach that I'm actually in the process of creating a course for. So that will be
That's exciting.
Available when this airs.
Awesome.
Which it really just goes into depth on each piece of the morning ritual. And when you do it consistently, and I tell my my clients this all the time, because anyone in my practice, any of my girls who just do it consistently, it's just it equals results. Period. It's very simple. This isn't actually that complicated.
You guys know I talk about my non-negotiables and morning routine all the time. If it's the only thing I get done right during the day, it's this.
Absolutely. It's a non-negotiable.
Non-negotiable.
When people ask me like, how? I'm like, it's a non-negotiable.
You just do it.
When you understand what it means, when you understand what it does for you. So, because now you're starting to make yourself a priority. And until you start to make yourself a priority, I mean, that you just have to be there. That's what this has to be. So I teach a lot about that too. So it's having that practice. And then I have another course that really teaches you how to coach yourself.
Okay.
So going deeper. So yes, now we've got the practices, we've got the foundation. We wake up every morning, we're connecting with ourselves, we're connecting with our guidance, we're processing, we're getting clear what we want. There's manifestation tools in there. And then now I take you to the next step. Okay, now let's really get in there. Let's really start to really understand the ego, understand our intuition. What does that feel like in our body? Because it's a very different feeling. And I teach a practice of learning how to actually coach yourself. So I've actually created a very specific technique to get you from the story into the emotion and then back out to your heart. And so I teach that in my other course as well. From there, now you're just living more in your heart.
Okay.
So now what I help people do from that point is, okay, now we're more in our heart. We have these practices. We have these tools in our tool belt. Yep. What do you want? What do you want? New relationship? More money? To start a business? To grow your business? To have a better relationship with yourself? Great. Let's do it. And then I help people through that.
Implement that and take action. I love that. What a great, because things are going to keep coming up. You're going to want new things. The ego is going to pop back up in different situations. You're going to be re-triggered by somebody else who says something and you're like, oh, that's still there.
As long as you're human and you're going to have an ego.
Right.
And you're living a human life, you're going to have all these things happen.
And that's my favorite. I posted something the other day about, doing this kind of work, and people think it's a one size fits all, but it's you're not going to eat the salad and be skinny later this afternoon, and you're not going to eat the cheeseburger and be fat tomorrow. This is the kind of consistent work that once you implement it into your life, this is what's possible, feeling like this, or being able to get back into this headspace quicker than you used to be able to do. And I have to tell you, when someone explained to me responding versus reacting, I was like, oh my God, I'm super reactive. I knew that about myself. I just didn't really know what the difference was. And this was in my early 20s. I was tomboy, quick to react, quick to defend myself, quick to stick up for my friends. It was always such an ego place of I think hanging with the boys, being able to hold my own. And, I was raised by a single mom. So I feel like there was some of that too. Always having to having someone raise you who acted feminine sometimes, but mostly in her masculine. It was very confusing for me to be able to get out of my ego, because men can roll through being in their ego mind and be really successful and have thriving careers, though they need to tap more into here as well. We know that. But for a female who intuitively, we're not really meant to show up quite so rough and rugged. And it was a great explanation as to why I was attracting certain relationships in the capacity that I was, because let's be honest, there can't be two bitches, and it depends on what kind of a situation you're in, but often that doesn't work. The roles have to be established. And if you go into a relationship, for me, for instance, doing all the things, taking care of all this stuff, and then you look back a year later, why am I doing everything? How come you don't help? Well, you taught someone how to show up for you.
So we get to be responsible for our choices and the things we create.
Yeah, that's exactly. So, how can somebody know that they're ready? I feel like if something like this is for you. So Randy and I are both 39. We both had divorces behind us. I have a son. That's a slight difference. We both own salons, been behind the chair. You guys know I'm going into the coaching space too. So I think this too, I wanted to touch on was, just because we're not behind the chair so much, I'm not hopefully going to be for too much longer. Come 2021, I have other goals and aspirations I want to work on. There's something we touched on earlier about holding on to things longer than you need to because of the ego. And there's parts of my ego that are having a really hard time letting my clientele go, because I've worked so hard behind it. But also my attachment to my clients. I know I won't get to see them in the same capacity every 6-7 weeks. It just won't be that way. But I think when you are in business, it's not always about how it feels. It's about what is going to get you to the next level. And sometimes that's uncomfortable. And the growth of being the new person in the coaching world, like that was something my ego was like, you got to start from the beginning again. Like you have to do the free shit. You have to give stuff away. You have to show up extra big. Like things won't just fall into your lap. Like I can't just turn around and say, hey guys, I'm now a beauty coach. Come hire me. Like it doesn't really work that way. So it took a lot of me peeling away those layers of ego to know, like, I can show up and be vulnerable. I can show up and say, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing, guys, but like, trust I'll figure it out as I go. Because I think that's one thing I'm not afraid to do is take messy action and fail. Because I think at almost 40 years old, like that part of me at least has calmed down a little bit to where I'm not afraid to look silly. I'm not afraid to make mistakes. And I think when you start to do personal development, like you have to be okay with not getting it right and not being able to like do it perfectly. And, you know, you see both of us showing up, you know, all camera ready, but this isn't always real life. Like if you follow her on social media, she's just as real, same with me. But at the end of the day, when you have equipped yourself with these kinds of tools, like you are the most powerful version of yourself. And if you show up like that, you can attract other people like that. And so, you know, we have like a few people that we know in between this like 6 degrees of separation. And she owned a salon, which is like 4 blocks from here. And it's like when you show up a little bit higher, you start to attract people that are on that level. So it's something else too that I struggled with, was having friends on the same level as me. You know, because you can ingest all of the stuff, the podcasts, the books, the coaching even. But if one person starts to implement and the other person does not, like you're no longer equal. Like you can take all the information in, but what that'll cause is frustration if you don't start to like take action and make change. You'll say, well, I did all the work. Well, listening to it and reading it is only the beginning. It's an awareness, like you said, of knowing when you read something or hear something, or if there's something she said that resonated that you were like, oh yeah, I do that, or oh, that's me, or oh, I'm struggling with that. You know, that's when it's your chance and your opportunity to say, I deserve to find out why that bothers me still, or why I keep having the same results in business or life, or why you can't break through making 6 figures, you know, or, you know, what it looks like to walk away from being behind the chair after 20 years for me. So this work is not easy, and it's not for the faint of heart, but it's the rewards that you get from showing up are the same as when you're building your business behind the chair. You can't show up sometimes and be available every once in a while and have a thriving career. It won't work.
I always say that this work is not for the weak, but it is and it will be challenging, but it's the most worthy path that you will ever go down.
So good.
And it really is a lifestyle.
Yes.
You know, touching on what we were talking about earlier, this isn't you hire a coach for 6 months, or you do a program for 3 months, or
and then
you
it's done.
meditate for 3 months and then you're done. No. Like this is a lifestyle. This is something I'm constantly saying to my girls. Like you get up, you check with your ego, you go brush your teeth, you take a breath, you process emotion, you have breakfast. Then you go out, you stop at a stop sign, and you check with your ego, you know, and you make a choice to choose your intuition and your truth. Like it's a constant choice. It's a part of our life. It's not about a finish line.
Yeah.
When you really, I had many moments throughout my journey where I've had like aha moments with this, but the more that I have just surrendered to it, it's like now layers come up.
Mm-hmm.
This morning I had a deeper layer come up where I felt more tired and more heavy. There's a lot going on in the world right now, especially those of us who are empaths and more sensitive. We can feel it a lot more. But it doesn't take me down anymore because I don't give it the power.
Yes.
So it's like, oh, another emotion came up, and like for years I was like, oh, I'm so emotional. Why is it another emotion? It's like because it's just where I'm at. That's who I am. That's how I am. So instead of getting mad at myself, which makes it like kind of lock into place, why don't I just navigate it? Like, oh, there's another emotion. What do I need?
Yeah.
So what I'm really talking about here is like learning how to become your own best friend.
Love that.
You know, learning how to show up for yourself in a way that it really does not matter what's going on. What's going on in your life? You're getting left by your partner. You've lost money. You've fallen down in some capacity. There's a freaking pandemic in the world. Like whatever is going on, it doesn't matter, but you can navigate it. That's why I'm so passionate about what I teach, is because what I'm teaching is like you can now show up for yourself through anything. And this doesn't mean that partnership still isn't beautiful, because it's my number one value, absolutely, but it gets to be extra. Mm-hmm. It's no longer about the man, the ring, the house, the kids,
and
the
then
money,
you will be happy, and then
you're gonna fulfill me. Like
right.
You can keep going down that path if you want, but let me tell you, I've already played it. I've already done the game. I've played it out pretty far. It doesn't work. It's never going to work. And so again, it's not about not having beautiful things, it's where they come from. So yes, I want to have a beautiful relationship. I want to have a family. I want to have abundance and all of these things in my life. I want to make an impact on the world. But where's my come from? If I'm doing it because I need to survive and I need it to feel safe and I'm latching on, it's going to end up being more chaotic. But if I'm doing it because I'm already grounded in who I am and it's more like adding value and extra, then it just gets to flow. So inevitably when someo's not available or something doesn't work out the way you want, you're like, okay, I still got me.
It flows in and out. It's okay.
And it really gets to flow.
Yes.
And this is when people talk about ebb and flow. Ebb and flow is a real thing.
Yeah.
But are you letting it flow?
Right.
This is
Or are
where
you trying to control it?
Yeah, we want to be in the flow, not in the, you know, it's like Jesus take the wheel.
Yeah.
Like, just
Go Carrie.
Just, yeah.
I think we've got a little Carrie going on today.
So yeah, it's like that. And I have just found that when we choose that, and again, it's choice, that's when anything is possible.
So good.
We get to really feel that freedom that I know all of you are looking for, all of us are looking for.
Absolutely.
We can list all these things that we want, but at the end of the day, we want to feel peace.
Yeah.
We want to feel free.
Yes. Truly embody that feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah. And be able to tap into it whenever we want. That's power.
Yes.
Okay, where can everybody find you? Because I know they're going to want to eat you up and all your good stuff. She has so much good stuff on her Instagram.
Yes.
And your website.
Yeah, so my website is all my name, randyhalloway.com, and then at Randy Halloway on Instagram. And I'll be continuing to share all my fun things that are coming. Like I said, I have a morning ritual and self-love
Course
that's coming out, and then my coaching course, which is Lead Yourself to Love, that's all coming up. And then I'm also launching, I'll be launching a mastermind. People who are really ready to like go there.
I love it.
I have group programs now too, but this is going to be like a next level. So.
And you guys know I talk about masterminds all the time and how they've changed my life. So if you have an opportunity and this is something that is calling to your soul, please send Randy a message. I'm sure she'd love to talk to you. We'd love to chit chat in the DMs with our people. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I'd love to know your aha moments or your takeaways. If you would tag us and share it and tell us what they were. So appreciate it. See you on the next one.